Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today about bringing library curation and information literacy into patron workflows and how we do that with our new partnership and integration together with Cite. My name is Daniel Horvat, and I'm the product manager of Lean Library. And please welcome Josh Nicholson, the CEO of Cite, and Matthew Hayes, managing director of Lean Library.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Before jumping straight into the agenda, I'd like to just mention that we are recording this session so that to whoever hasn't been able to join today will be able to show it. And to put this discussion into perspective, we will start off with Josh introducing Cite a little bit, after which Matt telling us about Lean Library and our current solution. And then we will talk about a few problems that we are overcoming with this new integration, and we'll see how this integration works in action. We'll also have a little bit of a discussion about our next steps together with Cite, as well as our new plans with Lean Library Futures, and we will have time for some questions at the end of the session. Thanks so much, Josh. Over to you.
Hey everyone. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to join today. My name is Josh Nicholson. I'm co-founder and CEO of Cite. Cite's really focused on trying to bring in the next generation of citations so that they're more useful than beyond just a metric. They can be digestible, they can be understood, and we do that by showing the citation context and classifying citations into 3 different types, whether they provide supporting evidence or contrasting evidence. And so the way that I like to briefly show Cite is to show the world as it exists without Cite, and then to show it through the lens of Cite. And so this is my PhD work. I have a background in cell biology. I was looking at chromosome segregation defects. I published my work in eLife. I did my PhD at Virginia Tech. We collaborated with the hospital in Portugal, as well as a lab at the NIH. My work has been cited 48 times and then viewed almost 10,000 times, a number that I'm consistently gaming up. And I show this because this is what we all kind of look at when we first look at a publication. Where was it published? Who are the authors? What are their affiliations? And then some metrics, the number of citations, the number of views, the number of downloads, and then increasingly alt metrics as well. And I would say that in most cases, people really just glance at citations and say, high is good, low is not so good. Maybe they'll click through and maybe they'll scan a couple of titles and open a few of them. But in general, people are not systematically opening and reading what 48 different studies are saying when they're coming to my article, because it's just a massive amount of work. But at the same time, there could be extremely valuable information contained within those citing papers. By definition, they're related, they're citing it. Maybe some of them have looked at the same claim that I've looked at, and maybe some of them support it, or maybe some provides contrasting evidence. And so we're really focused on trying to make those citations understandable so that you can see how something has been cited as opposed to just how many times has it been cited. And the way that we do this is by showing the citation context. And so here's my report under on Cite, and you can see up top we have essentially the same basic metadata as the version of record. So the title, a link back to the version of record, the journal that it's in, the abstract, the authors. And then really what is the core kind of value proposition of Cite is that we show the citation context from the citing papers. So this first one is showing citation context from the results section. It's classified as supporting because if you read it, it will say in agreement with previous work, cites Nicholson et al. 2015, the trisomic clone showed similar aberrations, albeit to a lesser extent, supplemental figure S2B. And so this is a quick way to not only filter based on these different citation types, but you can also search. So say you're interested in chromosome segregation defects, but not in human cells, but in yeast, you could search other citation snippets. You can filter by the year it was published, the article type, preprints, self-citations, and you can even visualize these reports. And so really it's just a quick and easy way to go through and see what does the literature say about this article that I'm interested in. And I think that's especially valuable for people that are new to a field, so students, or if you leave your field of expertise just a little bit. So a lot of interdisciplinary research we've heard brings a lot of value to researchers because they don't know kind of all the ins and outs and who is who in the field. And so they're forced to rely upon kind of all the proxies of quality that I mentioned before. And so how do we do this? How do we show the citation context and how do we make it easy to kind of browse through these things? So in short, it takes a lot of different machines to do this. And so the first step is getting access to the content. And so we work with over a dozen different publishers to sign indexing agreements where we are granted full text access to the content. Once we have access, that generally comes in XML or PDF. We then need to extract out the citation statements and the citations to create the citation graph. And so on the right, this is what it looks like of a PDF. There's a lot of machine learning, 11 different machine learning models, in fact, that go into identifying the in-text citation, matching that to the reference, and then matching that reference to cross-ref metadata. Once we have extracted the citation statement, we then have a deep learning model that classifies it as supporting, contrasting, or mentioning. And the way that we've built that, it was as experts, so MDs or PhDs, to read roughly 40,000 different citation statements and say, these authors indicate that they're providing supporting evidence, contrasting evidence, or that they're just mentioning that. That's then tested on the holdout set of 10,000 manually annotated citation statements where we can focus on precision and recall. And so the tool is not perfect. It will never be perfect because it's exceedingly difficult to classify and extract citations. We may miss some citations if we're dealing with a PDF from 1905. And maybe it's not always going to correctly classify citation statements as supporting or contrasting. But in general, it does quite a good job. And next to each citation statement, we allow users to say, hey, the tool got it wrong. It should be this. And so ultimately, we think this is a tool that, readers, researchers, students, administrators, anyone basically looking at scientific articles can use to better understand research and put it into context. And I think that's increasingly important as we have more and more content coming out of sources, in preprints, so that we can understand things. And I would say, it's significantly different than kind of a traditional citation index. Because I do think this is something that you can use, almost daily when you're reading a scientific article. And so with that, one other thing that we're also doing. So the core value of looking at citation reports clearly can extend to many different things. So if you're able to see how has something been cited, what else can we do to make this useful? And so we provide what we call the cite reference check to help authors. And this, we also work with journals and submission systems here to bring this capability to look at unpublished manuscripts. And so obviously unpublished manuscripts have not received citations. However, they do have a reference section, and those references have many times been cited by other papers. And so we built this system that allows you to take a Word document or a PDF, upload it, run the reference check where we automatically identify the references and citations, again, like we do with millions of articles, and then receive a reference report like this. And what this is useful for is making sure you're not citing anything that's retracted unknowingly. And so here's an example where this PDF is citing something that was retracted 7 years ago in 2013, and they're not acknowledging it. And then next to each reference is our badge that will show the number of supporting citations as well as contrasting. And it's not to say that if there's a contrasting citation statement, you should remove this. But if you spent years of your life doing the work and maybe months or years writing it up, it's a quick check to see how have others cited this. And maybe there's some other experimental evidence out there that I'm missing. And so we think this is a big value for authors, and there's parallels here to what we do or what researchers use in law. In addition to this, we also allow groups, and this relates a bit more to our partnership here, to look at groups of publications. And so these groups of publications can be created based on lists that you have internally, that you get from PubMed, that you get from some other tool, or that you get from Cite, so that you can start to say, I'm interested in this topic of research or this drug, or this group from our own institution, and I want to see how have articles been cited there. What is the most supporting article? What is the most contrasting article? What does the trend look like over time? And so we've built the ability to sync reference managers and tools like this, or to simply upload a list of DOIs to look at groups of articles, and not only to look at them, once, but to set alerts and receive emails when new citations or new papers appear. And I think that's a powerful way, again, to kind of understand not just an individual article, but a group of articles. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Daniel, and thanks again for everyone for joining.
Thanks so much, Josh. I'm just going to request control too. I'm Matt. I'm Managing Director of Lean Library. I came into Lean Library last summer and have since been working with Daniel, our product manager, to look at the future of the Lean Library product and where we wanted to take it. And I just wanted to say, because Josh was very humble about the power of Cite there, that I came across Cite in, I think it was 2019, and Josh and I were talking about this just before the call when Cite won the ALPSP award. And I was with Web of Science at the time, and I remember thinking, this is super cool. And when Daniel and I were starting to think about the future of the Lean Library product from last summer, Cite was one of the first third-party providers we approached. So I'm really excited about this partnership. I think it has huge potential, and I hope you are too. I hope you find it really exciting as well. So just to set the scene a little bit for Lean Library, New Year, New Lean Library is the title here. As you see here, we've got a new brand and new look, and hopefully you may have come across this in the community so far. For us, this has really been about setting a new direction for Lean Library, one that we think, I'm just going to move forward, one that we think actually honors our original mission of the co-founder Johan Tilstra, but also takes us in a new direction. And so to set the scene, I just wanted to play our new corporate video for you, which hopefully gives you a sense of our mission.
This is your patron, and this is their workflow. And off they go on their exciting journeys of discovery and learning. But getting to what they need takes your patron outside their workflow, bouncing them around from one site to another, making access difficult and time-consuming. You want to help them, but how? By putting the librarian in the workflow. With Lean Library, you can bring your library into your patrons' workflows, giving them instant access to library services, resources, and support, helping them reach their goals. Lean Library. Take your library to your patrons.
So hopefully that sets the scene quite nicely for sorry, there we are. Yes, to show you our new mission, or really I think it's a renewed mission for us. So we've thought a lot in the last 6 months or so, and particularly since the height of the pandemic, about what Lean Library is all about, and also about the role of the library and the librarian. And we know that, of course, at the moment, it's particularly challenging for patrons to come to the library physically, but we also know that patron behaviors have changed a lot in recent years, and they're often using public discovery tools. Maybe they're not always going straight to the library portal or the library website to begin their workflows. And so we think that raises the question of how can we make sure that librarians are present in their patrons' workflow, able to give that support and help that librarians are so effective in. And that's why our mission is about helping to redefine and amplify the power of the academic library, all of course to service student learning and researcher impact. And there are two particular projects that I wanted to highlight before we go into the partnership with Cite that I wanted to draw to your attention. The first is this global consultation that we have soft launched this week and which we're launching formally next week. This really for us comes back to that mission of redefining the role of the library and helping to redefine the role of the library. So this consists of a large-scale librarian and patron survey, which is available now on our website. And our intention here is to try to take forward previous research on the future of the library and this idea of taking the library into the life of the user, but to focus more than past papers on looking at the role of the librarian specifically, and particularly at that relationship that librarians can have with their patrons. So would love it if you could check it out. There's a link just there to librarianfutures.com, and there are free t-shirts in it for you as part of our prize draw, which we think are very cool. So please do check that out. We'd love your participation. The second big initiative for us this year comes back to that mission of amplifying the power of the academic library. And this is a new service for libraries that we call Lean Library Futures. Daniel's going to go into more information, more detail about this later, but we see the Cite partnership as a key pillar of this new service. And without going into the detail now, broadly, the intention and ambition of this service is to take the library into patron workflows using the power of our browser extension. And the way that we are doing that is by partnering with library service providers like Cite, but also like SpringShare, you may have heard of recently, one of our announcements, and the big discovery services, as well as many others, to try and bring those tools, resources, and support into the patron workflow at the point of need. So I hope that helps give you a sense of our ambitions for the year and where this Cite partnership sits. But before we go into that, I also just want to very quickly give you an idea about the core functionality of Lean Library if you're not familiar with it. So Lean Library is perhaps best known for being an access solution. We believe we're one of the most comprehensive of our kind. And the intention behind our access solution is to use the browser extension to streamline access to library resources and content, particularly when patrons are working off campus. So to show you how that works, here is how patrons would currently access library content if they didn't have a solution like the Lean Library browser extension. We know they often use open discovery services like Google and Google Scholar. Over 40% of library discovery takes place from Google and Google Scholar, and just under 6% from the library's discovery service. So often patrons are coming to content through their own workflows. And this is what, oh, apologies. This is, I can go back one. Here we are. This is what that workflow looks like for a patron. It is time consuming and painful. This is probably very familiar to you. It takes 12 clicks and a lot of time to get through to that paywalled content. With the Lean Library browser extension, we work with libraries behind the scenes to integrate their holdings information and authentication systems to streamline that so that from the patron's perspective, they can access content in just as little as 3 clicks, going from the search results in Google Scholar straight to the PDF, saving patrons time and ultimately driving usage of library resources. In addition to that, it's worth mentioning that we cover both ebooks as well as journals. We streamline access to aggregator source content that you might have through EBSCO in progress, as well as direct subscriptions to publisher content. We have extensive open access coverage, so we can unlock access to paywalled content when patrons hit paywalls. And we do that through partnerships with Unpaywall and Core. And finally, we have integrations with your ILL or DDS systems. So I hope that helps as a brief intro to Lean Library. I'm going to pass over to Daniel now to look at the integration.
Thanks so much. So with this integration, we are seeing a few obstacles and problems and difficulties, especially for inexperienced researchers and students. Some of them that have been mentioned already by Josh. Thank you so much for that. But basically, in the age of internet, when it's becoming more and more easy to find more and more academic articles online, information and context, especially in contextual information, is, as mentioned, very difficult to see. So that's one of the difficulties that we are overcoming with this integration. as well as being able to see the exact parts of course, the contextual information. So how other articles have seen a certain article, but more importantly, I would even say to avoid that we cite and we use retracted articles, for example, just like the one that is visible on the right side currently. So without this integration, we have no information whether this article has been retracted since being published or not. We will see in just a few slides how this is going to be displayed with our extension. As a quick reminder, I just wanted to mention that this integration is already available to all of our Lean Library Access clients, and whoever is not a client of ours can also check it out by downloading either the Cite extension, or we also provide an open access or Lean Library open access only extension, which basically has all institutional integration-free features that we provide. So whatever is not dependent on a specific affiliation, we provide it through with this institution. Please make sure to try it. This integration can be enabled in the dashboard underneath the integration settings. Soon after enabling this setting, the extension will start providing the Cite badges being injected into websites where it makes sense or where it's possible to do that. So basically what we are seeing here is a patron looking for a specific article on Springer, and then the extension on the right bottom corner of the site is injecting that little badge with the contextual information. It is important to know that the extension is only capable of doing this so where there is a valid DOI that the extension can pick up from the website, and we also are only showing the badge when there is information coming from Cite. For the vast majority of the articles, of course, there is information, but we want to avoid confusion, and so badges are not displayed when there are no available information. And from the badge, by clicking on it, the patrons can get redirected to Cite's website, to the corresponding article's website location, where basically citation types can be filtered, and all of those features are available that Josh mentioned previously, and also the research context and the relationship between these articles can be visualized in an easily digestible way. And getting back to the example of that retracted article, this is what it would look like when your patrons come across an article that has been retracted. Basically, apart from the other contextual information, the Cite badge also includes this red cross, making sure that this is highlighted to the patrons. And this integration is available, as mentioned, basically on every single website where there is either a DOI available either in the HTML content or in the URL. And we are working on making it available on Google Scholar very soon as well. On Google Scholar, it will have a horizontal visual, just like you see it on the screen. And where available, this badge will be injected underneath every single search result. I'd like to talk a little bit about the next steps. These are only the first steps as I see it with Cite, and there's quite a few very exciting things to come. What you see is basically how our Lean Library Access product and Lean Library Futures product relate to each other. So basically with Lean Library Futures, we're taking one step back and trying to see what other content or resource or support we are able to integrate into the patrons workflow. And we, as mentioned, do it by partnering up and integrating with key players in the industry, such as Cite. I also just quickly wanted to mention that we also have another, that we have also released a new, an integration recently and have published 2 case studies that is specifically about SpringShare, where we are integrating libguides into the patrons workflow, where it makes the most sense. So for example, if your patrons go to Google Scholar, for which your institution provides onboarding material, then those onboarding material can be shown and displayed to your patrons where they get to Google Scholar. Lean Library Futures, of course, will include Lean Library Access and all of its features, apart from all the other new pillars, as we call them, of Lean Library Futures. So whilst without going into extreme details with the specific pillars, I'd like to just highlight a few of them. Basically, we're going to work on providing on library service integrations. So, for example, integrating chatbot of your library, or integrating your discovery search results into certain engines. So when your client and when your patrons look for something on, again, just coming as an example on Google Scholar, we are going to be able to scrape those search terms at your discovery layer and providing those to your patrons in Google Scholar and providing an easy way of redirection back to the content page of the discovery. And as mentioned, the libguides integration is a perfect example for the content integration, where we're basically integrating with content. However, more importantly, library Trustmark is the pillar that is focusing on library curation and information literacy, and providing some tools to your librarians and also to your patrons to be able to better evaluate what kind of an article or content one is dealing with. And on the one hand, this pillar will provide an opportunity for the librarians, and this is something that George also mentioned, being able to evaluate huge number of DOIs and being able to see contextual information of those DOIs at once. We have been thinking about a few different kinds of data sources, and through of which you see a few examples on the screen. So for example, we are thinking about analyzing your library holdings and seeing how all of those articles that you currently subscribe to are being seen in the field by other articles. And we can also just go down even more into the details and see how the articles that have been cited in your subscribed articles within the library holdings have been seen in the academic field. Next to, for example, analyzing the institutional publications and how those are being seen, and again, the articles that have been cited within your institutional publications. Or, for example, also being able to see how the articles that your patrons visit whilst using the extension through your library, how those articles are being seen. So, of course, as you can imagine, all of these sub groups of DOIs and the analysis over these articles will provide a different kind of information. But we do believe that all of these will be very helpful and valuable tools to maintain and further improve library curation. On the other hand, we are providing a tool for libraries and librarians to basically highlight trusted, untrusted, or both kinds of articles to your patrons, providing a bit of additional information about what the library thinks is supposed to be trusted, and what shouldn't be trusted that much. The definition, whether or not, or the categorization, whether or not something should be trusted or untrusted, and depending on which category to be shown to your patrons, is going to be up to configuration that is done by the library administrator, of course. So if your library prefers just only highlighting the very highly trusted articles and decides to not show the untrusted badge here, then that's going to be possible, of course, and any other combination will be, of course, possible as well. Also, based on which this decision or this categorization should be done. We're also going to provide quite a few different kinds of configuration for that. So of course, we could use the library holdings as a trusted source of a set of DOIs. Or we're also thinking in integrating with indexing systems such as Scopus or Dimension, or any combination of these, and that will be, of course, again, in full control of the library and the librarians. So this was, of course, just a high-level introduction to Lean Library Futures and Lean Library Trustmark, and how we are utilizing our partnership and this integration with Scite within our Lean Library Access product, and how we are intending on taking it to the next level with Lean Library Futures. Should you have any more information? Should you want more information? Please do not hesitate to visit our website. All of the pillars and the features individually are explained on a high level, and also feel free to just reach out to us in email at all times.
So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box that have come through. Everybody, all attendees are muted, so I think the easiest way to ask a question is to put it into the Q&A box, or to raise your hand, and I will try to find you and unmute you. But the questions that we have so far, so Judith has asked, is there information of the coverage of Scite for the social sciences and humanities? So I guess we'll Scite be covering that.
So that's a good question, and maybe I can give kind of a broad answer before the specific answer. So as mentioned, we have signed indexing agreements with about a dozen different publishers. If you go to the homepage, you'll see the logos of all of them, and I think this is the best way to kind of just see, okay, whose access do they have. We have processed over 24 million full text articles and have about 840 million citation statements in the database. And so it's a lot, but it's not fully comprehensive. There's some big publishers like Springer Nature or Elsevier where we don't have indexing agreements. And so we only have open access articles from them available. We are also additionally supplementing our quote unquote smart citations with traditional citations now that references have been made more open. And so that is something that we're actively working on and will give us, I think, a comprehensive, citation record. In terms of social sciences and humanities, we've signed indexing agreements with Wiley, Sage, and Cambridge University Press. And I would say we have decent coverage there. It's not perfect by any means, but we're constantly working on that and working to increase that. And so it's not meant to be a replacement of say, Web of Science or Scopus. And we think, this is really kind of the data and how it's presented opens up new work cases that, students could really use and others beyond just a bibliometric resource or a traditional citation index. So it's not a perfect answer. I know we can't say we have 25% of all social sciences, humanities, but we're getting there.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Josh. The next question is from Ali, and she says, does the integration of Scite with Lean Library require an institutional subscription to Scite? And then, well, yeah, let's deal with that question first, I guess. So I think the question is, do you require a separate institutional subscription to Scite?
Yes, so Scite works in a freemium model, and so you can use Scite freely if you're using it here and there. We do have institutional subscriptions, and we're working with Lean Library to sell this, essentially as a package, so bringing best of both worlds. And we're pretty flexible. Again, if you consider the costs, I would say compared to some other citation indices, it's quite affordable for, I think, the given use case being very broad. And in the past couple of weeks, we've had thousands of UK students sign up and use the tool, which I think really highlights the capability of actually using citations beyond just a metric. And so we're excited for that. And we're excited to kind of bring these two resources because we don't deal with access at all. together, and then to also contextualize it with the other offerings of Lean Library. So the short answer is yes, you can use it though without a full institution, but ultimately you will bump into some paywall at some point.
And actually, Clara, maybe I could just add to that to clarify as well that as Josh mentioned with Cite's freemium model, so with the user experience that you saw where Daniel was showing how a patron could look at citation context on Google Scholar or on publisher websites, we are both making that available in the browser extension completely for free. So that is available in the version of the browser extension that current subscribing customers would have, but it's also available in a completely free version of the browser extension that any student or researcher can download. And that version of the browser extension is called Lean Library Open. And whilst it doesn't have the sort of library authentication aspect to it, it has the open access content coverage. And then the partnership that we'll be working on with Cite around the more premium features is primarily around advanced analytics. And that was where Daniel was talking about being able to try and analyze the patron reading habits and citation habits and authoring habits of your library's users.
Great. Next question, would deciding on trusted or untrusted resources be based on domains? So that's on the Trustmark piece.
You will be able to decide which domains this should be injected. So you can say that I want these badges to be shown on Google Scholar, but not on, I don't know, PubMed, let's say. And then within that, or after that decision, the way how categorization should happen at basically all sites or all domains, that's going to be a different setup and decision. So that would be my answer for that. So not based on not domains, but whether or not something gets activated on a specific domain, that's going to be a decision. And how these categorizations are constructed, that's a different decision and configuration.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Next question from someone who's activated the service in the Lean Library parameters, but they've encountered a problem with Firefox while testing. The site pop-up doesn't appear systematically on Firefox while it works fine on Chrome. Have we noticed any problems with Firefox browser?
Yes, unfortunately, Firefox is the only browser which we haven't been able to publish with the latest version just yet. We are actively working on that. So soon that's going to be uploaded to the Firefox store. Currently on Firefox store, there is one version older of a version of the extension. So that is the reason why the badges are not yet injected within Firefox. They'll be there soon.
Great. And then last question in the Q&A box so far is from Judith. Is it possible for an end user of the Lean Library browser extension to not see Cite?
So basically this is now controlled on an institutional level. So library administrators are able to activate it or inactivate it on an institutional level. And currently is not yet possible for the patrons to override that decision. However, over the summer, we are going to develop a completely new sort of patron-facing or patron dashboard that we're going to call the Workflow Manager, which is going to be basically, amongst others, the configuration or preference setup place for the patrons, where individual preferences will be able to be set up, obviously within the scope of the configuration that has been added on an institutional level. So it is currently not yet available, not yet possible, but it's going to be possible again soon by the end of the summer.
Great. I think that's all the questions we have for now. If anyone has any final questions, please pop them in the chat. But I think that's us. Great.
Well, we would like to thank you, your attention and your time. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to thank you for Matt and Josh and Clara as well. I would like to wish you a nice rest of the day.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you.